test time again. Isn't that going to be fun? Aren't you excited to be back to this? All right, we'll do the same kind of thing. Again, I'm not trying to freak you out too much, just warning you that what's coming up here in the next 2 weeks. All right, and again, if I had someone email me and said, oh, they're on a family vacation and the flight, there's some problem with their flight, so they weren't able to get back. And while I completely understand that, you don't get to do class participation exercises when you're on a family vacation. Unless the university has a specific policy on it, if you miss something, you miss something. You're not going to castigate you for not being in class, that's your decision. But please don't get too upset with me when I tell you no, it's nothing you personally. It's just, that's the rule of the class. All right, so today we talk about property law. Property law is weird. All law is kind of weird. Have you noticed that so far? Especially the people that teach it, we're fairly weird too. But it's weird, but when you get to it, there is an internal, for most things you can, once you know enough about it, there's an internal consistency or at least some sort of logic, a reason why they're doing what they're doing there. Even strict liability, you're on the hook no matter what, there's a reason for that. If you didn't need to do that, then products and people get away with it and make our society less safe. So the reason we have strict liability. Property law doesn't have any of those kind of things. It's just weird. It comes from, and I'm not saying this is a good thing, but it's the oldest law we have. It's almost 1,000 years old. And it comes from old white men who, if they controlled real property, then they had power. They controlled society. And so property law is all about old white men controlling and keeping power. Now you could argue all laws about old white men keeping power, and there might be an argument to that. But nevertheless, this one is, we've ameliorated a lot of the problems that we had before, but it's still just, it's very formulaic, it's very weird, and that's just how it is. Okay? Now, I want to give an example to start off here, just so we can talk about this. This is actually, I'm going to use a car instead of real property, although it was fine. Kind of give you the concept of property. Now, it's been pointed out to me that I tend to pick on the people in the front here so much, so I should pick on the people in the back, right? So I'm going to come back here and ask for some volunteers. Will you volunteer to be part of my example? What's your name?
Sanaya.
Sanaya. Justin. Oscar. Sanaya, Justin, Oscar. All right. Sanaya, Justin, Oscar. Now, Sanaya owns a house. It's a very beautiful house. She's got a house here in Arlington she's been living in. The end of the semester, she's thinking, or very soon actually, she's thinking, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to go travel. I need to sell this house. I'm going to travel on with the money. So she decides she's going to go sell her house, and she's going to do it without a realtor because they charge you a lot of money for doing almost nothing. And so she goes and gets a for sale by owner sign, takes it out to the front of her house, pounds it in there. While she's doing that, crap, I already forgot. What? So Sanaya, Oscar's over there in the middle. What was your name again? Justin. I apologize, Justin. Old people. I've got over 500 students. I wish I could remember everyone's names, but I'm too old to be able to do that. Justin then, when he's driving by, he has to see Sanaya out in front of her house pounding that sign in, and he immediately pulls over. He's like, Sanaya, is this your house? Yeah. I said, well, I said, in business law. She goes, yeah, I remember you. You're selling this house? I love this house. It's so beautiful. You made all these great choices. I love the valences, all this stuff. And she's like, yeah, I watch a lot of HGTV, so I've made some nice choices here. And Justin's like, man, I would love to buy this house. What are you looking for? And she's like, well, I was thinking about $400,000. He goes, I happen to have $400,000 in the trunk of my car right now. I know you're all thinking drug dealer, but whatever. Anyway, he's like, I'd love to lock this down right now. And she's like, well, okay, cool. I need some money. I'm going to be traveling. So she's like, I'll go in and whip up a deed. And so we're going to learn about deeds there. But she goes, pulls her old deed, makes a Word document she can do with that. She changes her name as the grantor, the one that's selling the property, puts Justin's name in as the grantee, has a legal description. He comes in with all the duffel bags full of the money, sets it down, and has $400,000. And she goes, okay, now, she prints out the deed. Before I sign this deed and transfer it to you, you got to understand, I'm not leaving for like another 2 weeks. So you got to let me, I'll do this now if you give me the money now, but you got to let me stay here until like Monday, 2 weeks from now. So that would be like March 2nd. He's like, oh, no problem. It'd take me that long to get all my stuff together anyway to move. She's like, okay, so he gives her the money, she signs the deed, transfers the title to him. So he owns the property now, and then he's all excited. He jumps in his car and goes to wherever he was going. She's like, puts the money in a safe place. She's like, well, that was easy. That was great. And she, well, I probably should take that sign down. So she goes out to take the sign down. And as she's going out to take the sign down, Oscar drives by. Oscar pulls her and said, Sanaya, is this your house? Yes, this is my house. And she's like, yeah, this is my house. You're selling it? I've always loved this house. She's like, yeah, I'm hearing that a lot lately here. He goes, oh, this is such a great house here. Now, would you consider selling it for $400? Because I've got $400 in the backseat of my car here, too. He must be selling drugs on the other side of town or something. But anyway, I've got 400 here. I'd love to buy this house. And she says, well, she could use 800, right? Yeah, sure, I could sell that to you. She's like, yeah, grab the money, come on in. So she goes and pulls up the Word document she had the deed in and just changes to print out another copy. She changes Justin and put Oscar's name in there. And she's like, oh, this will be fun. I'll be out in the country. They won't find me. And so she then executes another deed. Now, by the way, I'm not going to be out until March 2nd, so you got to give me 2 weeks. He's like, oh, yeah, no problem. She signs the deed. He gives her the $400,000. Then tonight, packs up all her money, heads out of the country. Monday, March 2nd rolls around, and both Justin and Oscar come from different directions with their U-Hauls, and they show up at the house at the same time. And they're like, dude, what are you doing here? What are you doing? I bought this house from that. You bought that? No, I bought the house from that. And they both talk and realize she sold them both the house, and they both paid $400 for it. Who owns the property now? So Justin, you say Justin because he got it first? Okay, let's change the scenario a little bit. Let's say when Oscar is, when he's looking to buy it, now, yeah, I'll buy this from you, I just got to check something. He remembers from his business law class, which we are about to talk about, let's just say he already knew. He goes to the Tarrant County Recorder's Office website. Every county has a recorder's office that records all deeds that people want to record in public notice of. And so he looks up there, and that's how they know who owns property for the assessor and everything. He looks up the property, puts in the address, and it says, Sinai owns the property. He goes, okay, I just want to make sure you owned it. Since you own it, great, here's the money, I'll take the deed. Does that change anything? That he relied on the public records to see that she still owned it? I mean, is it fair if he looks up the public records and says that she owns it, then he then pays her and he would own the property? Is it also fair that Justin got it first? Could you foresee this being a problem? What do you do in this situation? One person in my last section goes, you exercise your God-given right to file a lawsuit. And you could, but lawsuits take 5 years. She's out of the country, and basically people like her that sell this money, because you would sell to 2 properties to 2 people at once, you have blown through the money by the time the judgment rolls around. So that doesn't help very much. So who should own it? Justin, because he was first, even though there's no way Oscar could have known that. He just is a victim of the fraud. Why does he get to be victimized and Justin doesn't get victimized? We have something called the Recorder's Office. Maybe I should have done this later in the class. I'm just trying to figure it out. The Recorder's Office, every county has a Recorder's Office. I mean, and the recorder's job is people come in with their deeds, they present the original deed, the recorder then scans it basically, and then makes that a public record. So you can go to the recorder's office and look up every deed that's ever been recorded for any property in Tarrant County, and every county has it. And for rural counties, and back in the old days, even for urban counties, if you wanted to look up who owned the property, you'd have to physically go in there and go through their microfiche and look up everything. You could trace it. So I owns the property now, and before that there was Jennifer owned the property. Before that, Jeff owned the property, and you can go back all the way to when the United States stole this land from Mexico. And sometimes they'll even have some of the Mexican properties in there, so they can go back to when the Mexicans stole it from the indigenous, or manifest destiny brought us, or whatever you believe. I don't care about that. But you can go back, and that way you can look who's owned the property. And what that does, it's not required to use the recorder's office to transfer property. Transfer property, you just have to fill out the deed and deliver it. We'll talk about that in a minute too. That transfers title. But if you put that there, then the rest of the world is put on constructive notice who owns the property. Now I suspect most of you did not drive over to the recorder's office yesterday about 4:55. It's in an industrial park in North Fort Worth. You didn't go over there, look at it, and say, hey, show me all the deeds that were recorded today. I just want to stay on top of what's going on with the property around here. You didn't do that, did you? But constructive notice is, since you could have seen it, you're deemed to know about it, whether you bothered to look it up or not. If you're ever buying property, you should definitely do what Oscar did and check to see who owns it. The person who says they're selling it to you, if they're the ones that actually own it. By the way, you can also use the recorder's office and the assessor's office to look up any property in the county to see who bought it and sold it to them. You can also see how much they paid for it. I used to show the website to people at the recorder's office. This is in a different state, but I showed them how to look this up. And I said, okay, the president of the university, we put in her name, looked it up, found her house, found how much she paid for it, showed everyone how much she paid for her house and where she lived. Somehow she found out about that once and contacted me and asked me not to do that anymore. So I don't do that anymore, but it's public knowledge. You can look it up if you want to. public information. But you can look that up. So, the rule is, whoever records first wins. If there's someone like say the same property to two different people, it's whoever records first wins. So in this case, Oscar would look over at Justin and go, Justin, is that a rabbit over there? And Justin would go, where? And then he kick him as hard as Oscar kicks Justin as hard as he can in the knee. Justin goes down, he's like, oh! And then Oscar runs over to his U-Haul and then just whips out of there, starts heading towards the Tarrant County Recorder's office. He's Tokyo drifting the whole way there. Whoever gets there first and records their document first owns the property. It's kind of a weird system, isn't it? But if Justin had recorded his deed before Oscar, he had the advantage because then he would have given notice to everybody, and that means he would not have to worry about this. So you have incentive to go and get your deed recorded right away. That's an example of the weirdness we're facing. All right. So here's the. In fact, let's get this. Well, maybe we. You live with your parents in a house they own. You are planning an outside barbecue. They only put outside because there's people outside of Texas. Who has an inside barbecue? Outside barbecue, and have invited numerous people. 3 days before the event, the local power company begins to replace underground pipelines in your front yard. You will have dug up the yard, which now looks ugly, and to make a portion of the yard you intended to use for the party unavailable. Can the power company do that? Do they have the right to do that? And if so, yes? No, it's not. It has nothing to do with interstate commerce, but that's a good guess. The power company does have the right to do it. How did they get the right? From the government? Actually, that's not true. They didn't get it from the government. All right, we're going to come back to that. When we talk about easements, we'll come back to that. All right, now, another example here. But this time I won't pick on anyone to make them look like they're some sort of property fraudsters. All right, now, sorry about that. Thank you for allowing me to do that. Now you know what she's been going through the whole class so far because I've been picking on her. But let's say you've been saving up and you just bought a new car. It's a car you've been waiting for a long time. I mean, it cost that $80,000. So that meant instead of having 3 Starbucks a day, you only had 2 Starbucks a day for a while. Anyway, you save up, you spend $80,000, you buy this brand new car. It's gorgeous. It smells great. And it's got all these great things, and you're driving home, and you forgot to, before you left the dealership, you forgot to connect your phone to the Bluetooth in the car there, and it's got all these safety features that it won't allow you to connect the Bluetooth unless you stop and you're in the park and you don't want to wait that you've got something to do. So you remember your grandparents told you about like how in the olden days, people used to actually listen to this thing called radio. And it's got a radio in there, so you're actually, for the first time in your life, because I mean, who listens to radio? People who are just too techno noobs, or too much techno noobs, and they don't have a Spotify account, right? But anyway, you listen to the radio, and they break in, said, breaking news, Congress just passed a law, it goes into effect immediately. They've decided to nationalize all of the automobiles in the country. For pollution and commerce and inflation reasons, what would they decide to do now? Henceforth, every car is now nationalized. So everybody has to leave the keys or the key fob of the car in the car. You're no longer allowed to lock your car. You have to leave the keys in there. And then when you're done, you park it, and whoever is walking along, if they need a car, they can just use whatever car they want to. You can use whatever car you want to, but anyone can use your car anytime they want to. That's the new law. It goes effect immediately. I know that's weird. Let's just say hypothetically that happened. You just spent $80,000 on that car, and setting aside depreciation, like it's going to get wear and tear. Setting that aside, let's not worry about that. If now, anyone who wants to can drive your car whenever they want to, is it still worth $80,000 to you? Has the value changed? Has it gotten lower or higher? Why? Yeah, because everybody can use it. So that lowers the value if everybody can use it? Well, I mean, if you own the car, wouldn't you let your significant other, maybe your family, drive the car? I said that and someone's like, I won't let my spouse drive it for at least the first 30,000 miles. I was like, well, that's not how it works in my relationship. It's just one of the many things, but when we first got married, and I had this crappy car I had all through undergrad and grad school, so we went and bought me a new truck, and my wife, at least on weekends and stuff, would take that truck when she was going out to go shopping all the time. And when a couple months later, we got her a new car, and she's like, this car takes so much gas. I just can't believe it. I'm like, it doesn't take more gas. It's just you were always driving my truck. You never drove your old car. That's why you thought you didn't have to fill it up as much. Now your car's nicer, so you're driving. Anyway, You let other people drive your car probably, right? Some. So why does this situation where anybody can drive your car lower the value if it wouldn't lower the value if you're going to let your spouse or your family members? Yes?
Because the other people in question aren't at the same level of like, I guess relationship with compared to like your family or your.
Okay, so there's somebody you don't know. Why does that lower the value? Let's say they're required to return the car where they found it, but it won't be there at any given time when you need it. Someone else can have it. Yes, in the back.
Because you yourself can pick whichever car you want, your neighbor's car or down the street.
So you actually get some value, right?
No, because they can also take yours.
Right, and why does that lower the value?
Because you spent 80 grand on yours and they could have only spent 40 and they could have taken.
Oh, so okay, well, let's say you live in a rich neighborhood.
Oh.
Why does other people using it lower the value of your car? I mean, even if you can only find some hoopty car to drive in, why does that lower the value of your car?
It's kind of like renting it, but they may not take care of it as much as you do.
Okay, let's assume that there's not going to be any issue, like you're not going to wear it out more. I just want to say, if someone can take your car, why is it not as valuable anymore?
It's not your car anymore.
What do you mean? Sure, it's your car. It's titled in your name. You have to bring it back to your house. Yes? Well, it becomes the same as any other car. Why does that lower the value though? What? Well, yours is worth. Yours is worth more. We agree that if anyone can take it, it lowers the value. Is the lowering of value because anyone can take it? That doesn't lower the value. You're cool with it if anyone can take it?
I mean, like.
Would you really pay the same $80,000 for another car if anyone can take it?
No, but like.
Okay, so it does lower the value if anyone can take it, right?
I mean, the car's value is not inherently lower. The
No,
fact
but
that
it has a value to you. You were willing to pay $80,000 for it.
What I paid for was the exclusive right to use my car.
Exclusive right. So if other people can use it, if you can't exclude other people, then it's not as valuable?
That's not what I said.
No, that's exactly what you said. You said exclusive right. Doesn't that mean exclude? It's the same word.
But I paid for it, so
I think so. You should be able to use it. I'm not saying you shouldn't. But basically, if you have the exclusive value, you get to exclude other people. Okay, she's not going to admit, or yes, that's exactly what it is. If you can't stop other people from using it, it's not as valuable. You all are just as greedy as the boomers. But am I wrong? If anyone can just up and take it, then it's not as valuable of a thing for you anymore, is it? Property value, we get value for property because we can tell who we can exclude others. Only the people that I say can use it. Right? Now, no one wants to admit, she doesn't want to admit it, but that's exactly what it is.
No, I'll admit it.
Okay, she's admitting it now, only under cross-examination. But the point is, property gets its value from being able to exclude others. It is basic selfishness. And as much as you like to give old people crap about how awful and terrible we are, and don't get me wrong, we are awful and terrible. I don't know if you're radically different. I mean, it's your stuff. You don't want people taking it, right? Okay, so this definition here, the legally protected expectation of being able to use a thing for one's advantage, is just a nicer way of saying I can exclude other people. Now, for the test, though, we won't make you say I want to be able to exclude other things. This is you got to know that language for the test, all right? So for the exam, you know that definition. Take a picture if you want to. All right. The legally protected expectation of being able to use a thing for one's own advantage, and that's the nice thing about your house. Your house is your house. People can't just come in there, start eating food and watching your TV, and more importantly, blowing up your bathroom. You know, we can't do that, right? We get to exclude from that. Now, the origins, as I said, I'm not going to go into a lot of that. It's just there's really a lot of weirdness because it's all about if you have property and power, it's keeping you in power and making it hard for other people to get it. Now, I mentioned before about deeds. The way that you transfer ownership is our deeds. So, if I were to convince you to give me your phone, like I gave you money for it or whatever, something like that, how do we show that ownership of your phone is transferred to me? That phone right there. What would we do? Do we have to sign a document that says that I have title to it now? No. What? I mean, really, once I gave you the money or whatever it is, and you were satisfied, what would you do to give me ownership? Would you hand it to me? Yeah, just pick it up and hand it to me. The way you show you own most personal property, non-real estate property, is you possess it. doing this out of order. I should never done this out of order. Okay, one more definition, I'm sorry. There are two kinds of property. There's real property and personal property. You've heard of this before, right? Real property is land and anything permanently attached to the land. And when I say permanent, it doesn't mean you can't remove it, it's just not easy to remove. All right? So land, anything permanently attached to the land. The land underneath this building is real property. They sunk a foundation into this building, and it's not easy to remove that foundation, so that became real property. Then they built walls and floors, and they built this building on top of that foundation, so that means that walls and floors are real property. Then they came in these desks, they bolted these to the floor. So if I yank on it, I can't really move it, right? Now it's possible to remove it, but just I can't walk away with it. So since it's mostly permanently attached to the floor, that's permanently attached to the foundation, that's permanently attached to the real estate, these desks are real property. One time I was teaching a class and I said, see this dry erase board? It's permanently attached to the wall, so it's real estate. And I yanked on it and the thing came right off, so I'm not going to do that now. Let's pretend. Now, dry erase boards don't grow naturally on land, right? You go to the store, or I'm sorry, you don't actually go to the store. You go on Amazon and you order one, right? You order a dry erase board, whatever it is, but then you can attach it to the wall. Once it's permanently attached and it's not easy to remove it, then it becomes real estate. It wasn't real estate at first, now it's real estate. Personal property is everything else. Anything that has any value whatsoever or substance whatsoever and is not permanently attached to real estate or to the land is personal property. So most of your chairs are bolted to the desks, so they're real property. This chair right here, I can move it around. It's personal property. And after the test, in chapter 11, we're going to do one whole chapter on the Uniform Commercial Code, which is a special kind of law for contracts about personal property, tangible personal property. So we're going to talk a little bit about it has to be movable and you have to be able to touch it. But that's personal property. Now the laws for personal property are weird too, but they're not nearly as bizarre as real estate. So we're talking mostly about real estate here. So when I said how do we show title or how do we show ownership of personal property, you generally possess it. You have it in your hand. Now if I were to walk up and grab the phone, does that mean I own it? No, we have some laws about that. It's still his. He didn't actually give it to me. So once he gives it to me, transfers the title to me, basically I show I own it by possessing it. Some very expensive personal property like cars and equipment have written titles to them, but by and large it's just possession. Real property, on the other hand, you can't pick it up. You can't walk around with it. You can't say, here you go. So we use a document called a deed to transfer title. Now, I'm not going to make you learn what has to be in a deed. It is very archaic and weird. I'm going to mention it quickly here just to give you an idea, but you don't have to repeat that on the test. You will have to know these three types, but you need to know that for the test, okay? But a deed itself has very specific wording. It has a grantor. That means the person who owns the property is transferring it to like the seller basically, transferring to the buyer. The seller is called the grantor. The buyer, the one who's receiving it, is called the grantee. The grantor has to give the name of all the grantors that are signing the deed. Then they have to say that they are here grant, bargain, and selling, or they are transferring title to this property, and they have to give a legal description of the property. The address is not a legal description. This is a very specific scientific way of describing the property. You can't use the address because addresses change. Streets, names change, they get vacated. We can have nuclear holocausts that destroy all the roads, whatever it is. We don't care with real property law. You have to give a legal description. It's like latitude 35, 18 minutes, 22 seconds north. Longitude 72, 20 minutes, 4 seconds west. Minutes and seconds are actually measures of distance off of these latitude and longitude things, in case you're wondering why I'm saying minutes and seconds. And that will give you a specific point. Now, then from this point, going 85 degrees north by northwest, 120 feet, then turning 270 degrees east by 500 feet, then turning 18 degrees south by southwest, and you have this legal description about that. It tells you exactly scientifically where the land is. That must be in every deed. Now, just so you know, in urban areas like Tarrant County here, they've got a hack to help you get around that. They take every piece of property as it's been described, and they put it in a plat map, and they make these maps and they put them in books that have in the book it has to have those meets and bounds legal descriptions, but they'll just call this block 7 or lot 7 of block 8 of page number 17 of plat book 42 of Tarrant County on record with the Tarrant County Recorder's Office. So that way you can just do that kind of generic legal description there, just from the plat books, and if somebody wants to, they can go to the court office and figure out exactly needs and bounds. And so in non-urban counties, they don't bother doing that, so you're always stuck with the median and things. You need basically a surveyor or an attorney to put it together, and I didn't ever take a class in that, I just was a real estate lawyer, so I had to learn how to do that crap. But that must be in there, it must be signed with certain acknowledgements by the grantor, and then it has to be notarized. That's where you get a public notary, someone who's been authorized by the state to have people come in, identify themselves with their driver's license or passport or identification, sign a log that says this is the person and what they're doing, and then the notary will say the person who signed this is actually the person whose name's on it. But it must be notarized. Once you do all that, you're halfway done transferring the property. The second thing you have to do is you have to deliver the deed. That means you have to physically hand it over to the grantee, or at least to the grantee's representative. You have to transfer the deed. So filling it out and signing it is one thing, but it doesn't effectively transfer title until the deed has been transferred. So I know people say, well, I'm going to die soon and I want my kids to have my property, but I don't want to make them go through probate. So if you die either with a will or without a will, the way we transfer your assets is through this court process called a probate process, which I think is a shame we don't talk about here in this class. But guess what? Next semester we're going to use an OER textbook that I've been putting together, so it's a free textbook, and I'm kind of choosing what's going to be in. So we're dropping the negotiable instruments crap because no one cares about that, and we're going to do a probate next semester. But don't worry, you're all going to pass the class. You won't have to worry about that, right? But the probate process is where you go through when someone died. This is how you distribute your asset. Especially if it's a large amount of assets, that can take years and cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. So people like, I just want to avoid that. I just want my house to go to my kids, and so they'll like sign a deed. They'll fill it out and sign the deed, and then tell kids, all right, now I'm not giving it to you right now. I'm going to put it in the filing cabinet. Here's where it is. Once I'm dead, come in and take it out of the filing cabinet, and you can own the property. It doesn't work. Someone has to be alive to transfer their property. So if they fill out the deed and sign it, that's half of it, but they haven't physically handed it over. It doesn't transfer property. It still goes to probate. And there's ways of getting around that, but with trust and other things. But that's not this class. So it's a pain in the ass kind of system. Can you see that? And again, it was made to be a pain in the ass kind of system because owning property is still important now, but it was very important in medieval times. That's how you became a duke or a lord or whatever it was, so that you go out and oppress people. And so they made it very, very hard to pass that around. Now, here's what you got to know. 3 types of deeds: quitclaim deed, warranty deed, special warranty deed. First thing you need to know is they all transfer the exact same amount of title. If you get any one of these kind of deeds, title, whatever the grantor had now belongs to you. It doesn't, they do not one transfers better or more superior title. They transfer the same amount of title. The difference is what the grantor promises to do if there's a problem. That's the only difference between the 3 of them. In a warranty deed, the grantor says, I'm transferring all title I have to you, and I promise and warrant that this title is good. And if there's ever a problem with title, someone pops up and says, well, I own this corner, or it really belongs to me, or whatever it is, the grantor promises that they will pay the money, whatever it takes to fix that problem for you. So they warrant the title. The title's good during the time they own it and for any time before they own it. And so if there's ever a problem, the grantor says, I'll pay for it. A special warranty deed is where the grantor says, if there's ever a problem, it still passes the exact same title. But if there's ever a problem with title, if that problem came from the time that I own the property, then I will pay for it. If the problem with title came from before I owned the property, you buy it. So the difference makes sense? And then a quit claim, not quick, quit with the T, not a CK. Quit claim deed says the transfers the exact same title that warranty and special warranty deeds transfer. But the seller, the grantor says, I'm giving you no warranty whatsoever. So if there's any problem with title, you have to pay for it. That's just the difference. Pretty straightforward, right? That's not super confusing. There's all these different names that swirl on. This is, a lot of stuff is super confusing. But that's not it. So, that's the difference. They all grant the exact same amount of title. Whether you got a quitclaim deed or a warranty deed, you get the same title. Whatever the grantor had and said they were given to you, you get that exactly the same. The only difference is if the grantor steps in and covers problems. Now, usually there aren't a lot of problems. Most of the time now when you're buying a house, you're borrowing money, or you're buying land, you borrow money to do it. And the lenders get what everyone euphemistically calls a mortgage. In Texas, we don't do mortgages. We do something called a deed of trust. But give them a lien that allows them to foreclose and take the property away from you if they won't pay them. Now, that lien that they have there is only valid if your title is valid. So if there's a problem with title and someone comes in and says, no, I really own it, the person who sold it to you didn't actually own it, the lender's lien is wiped out. And then once you no longer have the house, you're not likely to keep paying them, and they don't like that. So what they do is they make you do a title search. A title company will do a search, and they will research all the titles all the way back to when we stole this from Mexico, and make sure that the title is good. And they also will buy title insurance from that title company, or they'll make you buy it. So if there's a problem, this insurance company takes care of it. And that way the lender can be assured that they're not going to lose their secured interest because whoever sold that to you had a problem. So nowadays it's not as big of a deal because there's always titling. But if you ever buy property just for cash, so you're a drug dealer or something, you got the $400,000 and you're buying it for cash, go get a title insurance policy just before you actually send the money to make sure you're not going to have a problem. Make sense? Okay, any questions about the differences between those deeds? Feeling good? We can do this? Okay. Tenancies. Now, I know you see tenancies and you think like landlord-tenant, but landlord-tenant is one form of tenancy. It's called landlord-tenant because of these tenancies. These tenancies is an old English word which kind of means the different ways of possessing or owning or using property. In English common law, they had about 39 of these things, and these suck. They are so complicated. My property law class in my first year of law school, I had to learn every single one of them and be able to do awful tests about them. And no one does this stuff anymore for the most part. But they suck. I'm not going to make you learn 39, I'm going to make you learn 2. And if you see me pausing while I'm talking, I'm trying not to accidentally start talking about the other 37. Okay, I'm just trying to keep this simple. So the 2 tendencies you got to know are fee simple absolute. It's already written fee simple up there. Fee simple absolute. That's the first one you got to know. Fee simple absolute. And the second one you got to know is life estate. Life estate. So you got to know fee simple absolute and life estate. Fee simple is Old English, means ownership. Fee simple absolute means you have complete ownership. You own every part of the land. Everything belongs to you. The way the English courts used to describe ownership of land is they called it a bundle of sticks. There's bundles of sticks, so if you had fee simple absolute, you had all of the sticks in your bundle. You are able, if you want to take out certain sticks, certain kind of ownership rights, and give them temporarily or permanently to other people. Now, if you ever look this up, they used a word that in Old English meant bundle of sticks, but in our language, it's a gay slur, so I don't say it. But it begins with an F and ends with an agate. But back then, for the Old English courts, they called that meant bundle of sticks. Okay, that's all it meant. So, but I'm not using that word, so I'm just going to say bundle of sticks, all right? I know it's silly, but again, I don't wish to be disrespectful, so even if that's what they use, I'm not using that word. Now, for example, one tenancy that you've all heard about is landlord-tenant. You know, they have this residential and commercial tenancy. Tenancy means there is a right to possess the property. So the landlord, if they have whatever the bundle of sticks they have, they could say, I'm going to lease this apartment to you for a year. So what they do is they take the possessory, the right to possession, that's one stick out of the bundle, and they give it to you and agree to give it to you for a year. So for a year, you hold that stick, which means you have the right of possession, which means you can live there, and the people you designate can live there. The landlord cannot. The landlord's not supposed to come on the property unless, residential ones, there's sometimes like they can come in an emergency to fix things. But otherwise, they have to give you warning or notice, and they can't just come and hang out there. You have the possessory right, so you're the only one that can live there and do whatever it is that you do there, right? That's one stick, and then when the tenancy's over, you give it back to the landlord. The landlord takes that and puts that back in their bundle of sticks. Does that make sense? So fee simple absolute means you have all the sticks. Nothing has been given to anyone else. You own all the property rights. Now, my wife was finally able to move down here at the end of last February, so she's been here almost a year now. So at the end of last February, she and I bought a house. We potentially could have done it, but it would have really wrecked our retirement plans. We could have bought a house when I first came down here. I suppose we had the money for that, but when we did, she stayed in our house in Chicago until she was ready to move down here, and then we sold that house and bought another one. When we bought one that was brand new build. That happens a lot around here. Brand new build. No one had lived in it before. And when they transferred it to us, they gave us a deed of fee simple. And they're like, this means you own everything, but I know what fee simple means. The real estate agent or the agents, the people that work with them, they had no idea. They're telling me a bunch of stuff that wasn't true. We did not get fee simple absolute. We got fee simple. One of the main things, and I read the deed and I understood it. One of the things is the mineral rights. The rights to any locatable minerals under our property belong to somebody else. We don't have those. Because in Texas, if you can find some valuable mineral like oil, That's common, that we'll have that under people's land. So when the builder bought that land, even before they decided to sell the mineral rights to somebody else, an oil company, and then when they sold the land to us, they didn't have fee simple absolute either, they just sold us what they had. So we have a deed in fee simple, but we don't have absolute, we don't have the mineral rights. Does that make sense? In the olden days, if you had fee simple absolute, what they said in common law is you own from heaven to hell. That means you owned all the airspace above your land, and you owned all the mineral rights and all the dirt and everything underneath your land, all the way to hell, or now the center of the earth. Generally, practically, there's no way we can get to the center of the earth. You'll learn that notwithstanding. But you own what's under it. But most of the time now, especially in mineral or oil-rich areas, someone else will usually have gotten it. A fee simple absolute means you own everything. All right. A life estate means that you have the possessory and a few other rights for the term of your life, or the term of the life that measures the life estate. This was a common thing that we saw when, okay, this is a sexist time. I don't agree with how this happened. I'm just explaining to you what it was. But up until about 50 years ago, women in a lot of places couldn't own property. I know you're going, that sounds very, terrible and sexist. Yes, it's terrible, and yes, it's sexist. But they couldn't, or they couldn't own it in fee simple. So if a man died, if he wanted to leave property to his wife, what he'd do is he'd leave her a life estate. That means for the term of her life, she owned the property. She could live on it, she could mine on it, she could grow, crops on it, she could rent it out, she could even sell it. But if she sold it, she could only sell it for the term of her life, because her life measured the life estate. If she sold it outright, everything she had to someone else, they only owned it for the term of her life, not their life, her life, because her life measured the life estate. When she died, regardless of what else other arrangements she made, no one had to pay. If she sold it, they didn't have to pay back any money to anyone she sold it to. It immediately went to whoever the decedent said it goes to. So they'd say, I leave the life estate to my wife, and then to my oldest son, or to my sons, or something, because that's what they usually do. Again, sexist there. They leave the remainder, the rest of them. So that means once their mother died, they then got whatever the father had, the fee simple, absolute, fee simple, whatever. Does that make sense? And people can still do that. You can leave somebody a life estate. Please don't do it. It's stupid, it's asinine, it really causes a hassle. But you can do that. Now, fortunately, we're doing better now in the law. We haven't completely stopped all our discrimination, but we're getting doing better now. So, for one thing, we can do this. So, like my will, it doesn't have to be a will, but my will, it says when I die, if my wife has not predeceased me, or if she doesn't die within 2 weeks of me, because if she died within 2 weeks of me, then if I left everything to her and then it went to our son, they'd have to do 2 probates. So if I say, if she dies within 2 weeks of me or has predeceased me, then everything I own goes to my sons. But if she hasn't died, predeceased me, or died within 2 weeks of me, then everything I own goes to her. And she owes it in whatever fee simple I'm able to pay. Does that make sense? That's a much better thing than giving her a life estate. It just totally complicates crap. Please don't do it, but you'll run into it enough that we want you to know about it. Does that make sense about the life estate? And now the life estate the remainder could come back, like if I give it to someone for their life and I'm still alive, I can have the remainder come back to me if I wanted to. But you can do it, you don't have to do it through wills and willing, but that's stupid in any way. So those are some tendencies, those are the ones. Trusts. Trusts are sort of like a contract, which you haven't learned about yet, but that's okay. That's where you sever the legal title and the equitable or beneficial title. So if I want to create a trust, especially if I want to, it doesn't have to be for probate, but if I want to avoid probate, I can say, while I'm alive, I'm going to put all of my assets, all my real estates in trust. I'm going to appoint a trustee and then list beneficiaries. The trustee will have legal title, which means they'll own the property. But the trust will then instruct them to use the property for the benefit of the beneficiaries. So the benefits get to live on it, the beneficiaries get to live on it, and the trustee has to comply with it. Now, with inter vivos trust you don't do while you're alive, you can be all three things. You can be the grantor, the one who put the assets in, you can be the trustee who controlled it, and you can be one of the beneficiaries. So if I made a lifetime trust, inter vivos trust, I could say, I'm the grantor, going to put my property in. I'm the trustee, or my wife and I can be the trustees. We're the ones that decide what we technically own it. We decide what to do with it. And then the beneficiaries that we have to use it and get instructions to benefit will be us. We're the primary beneficiaries first, and then upon our death, it goes to our children. And then, when we die, it doesn't have to go through probate. We can go around it. We can also control it so that when we die, well, my 2 sons are 24 and 19, but there's been a lot of research on this, and giving someone a lot of money before they turn 30 is almost guaranteed way to ruin their life. Because if you get a whole bunch of money, then are you going to come and sit through these boring business law classes? No, you're going to go out and party. You're going to have a good time, right? And they'll usually do that, and if they wind up spending all the money and then run out of money, then whatever age they are when they run out of money, they have no education, they have no career, they have no skills, they're just basically worthless. They're Paris Hilton, all right? So if you have a significant amount of money, it's often good to set up a trust and say, all right, so if my wife and I were to die right now, and I don't have so much money that my kids couldn't live on it forever. I don't have a trust right now, but I do have a testamentary trust. I mean, when I die, this is what's going to, it all goes to my wife, and if my wife predeceases me, and my children are under the age of 30, then it's going to go into a trust. If they're above the age of 30, I'm giving it to them. But put it in a trust. And what this trust will do is say, all right, now pay for them to go to school, pay for them to have a place to live and everything. And then when they hit certain milestones, like they graduate from college, then they get this much. They get 1/4 of their inheritance. When they hit the age of 25, they get another 1/4, and when they hit 30, then they get the rest of it. And that way I can time it so they can still be taken care of, but they don't necessarily get it all and just start partying and never finish college. Does that make sense? So you can do things like that with trusts. You don't just have to know that's something you can set up there. Property law does change and evolve. Condominiums are an example of something they never had in the common law in England. So if you own a condominium, you own your unit, but you often share walls and share roofs and share parking lots with the other condominium owners, right? So you have common ownership of a lot of things. You have both individual ownership and common ownership, and homeowners associations are set up to manage those things. So condominium law is a whole new area of law. I'm not going to make you learn it. It's quite complicated here. I'm not saying you couldn't learn it, but we got a lot of stuff to cover. That would be a whole class by itself. But that's an example of it evolving. All right, now, servitudes. There are other bundles of sticks besides possession. So a servitude, the first one we talked about is an easement. That's where someone has the right to enter your land and use it in a specific way. So whenever your house was built, they're required by law, and most people want this, to hook up the house to power, water, sewer, right? Because you don't want to have to go pump the water from a pump and then bring it inside and heat it up and then take a bath. You want just to be able to turn on the faucet. So they're required by law to do that. So they'll go to when they build the house, they'll go to the power company and say, hey, will you come in and set this up? And they said, sure, we'll do that. It'll cost you this much, plus you have to give us an easement. You have to sign a deed that gives us the right to run these underground power lines from your house, and maybe you can run them underneath your house to the lots behind you there. And you give us the right to come in and maintain them and service them and fix them whenever we need to. So we can dig them up. Now we agree we'll put back your yard the way it was before. We'll fix it. But you give us the right to do that. Otherwise we'll refuse to do this and no one can occupy the house. And so people then sign a deed and give them an easement. That means they didn't have the right to possess it, but they have the right to run those lines and then come in and fix them when they need to. So in that example, how did the power company have the right to dig that up right before your barbecue? That easement did. The government didn't give them the right, the easement did. Now easements can be for other things too. A lot of old houses or old blocks were built with way more land than we do now, and that was because people 100 years ago would grow gardens and actually grow food and eat it. That was part of how they got the nutrition they needed throughout the years. They'd have another acre or half acre behind them that they'd be growing food on every summer. Nowadays we don't do that as much. When I was a kid, I mean not 100 years old, but I'm 56 years old. When I was a kid, we had a big garden, and my parents would make me go work in it and weed in it. And I hated it. I have no desire ever to be near a garden again. If society breaks down and the grocery stores don't have food, I don't want to live, okay? Because I've seen what it's like doing the other side of it, and I don't want to do that. But if you have one of these really old blocks that has all this space in the back, now no one's using them. A lot of people, especially as we get more crowded in our cities, will subdivide the lot and then build another house behind that and sell that to someone. The issue is there isn't a street that usually goes between these big lots in the back, so the only way they can access the street is to go across the front lot. And a lot of people front lot, they don't want to rip up part of their yard and make a second driveway. So what they'll do is they'll give an easement. They'll build kind of a driveway in the back lot that connects to the driveway in the front lot, and then they give an easement to the back property and say, you have the right to drive across this lot, or to drive across this specific area on the driveway to access your property. So that's an easement that they and their guests can drive back and forth on that. Does that make sense? You can give easements to the government. If you own a house and then you live on a public street, generally the street is not owned by the city, the street is owned by the property owner. So you, from the sidelines of your property out to the middle of the street, you own that street. And the other half is owned by the people across the street from you. But when the developer, the builder, was asking for zoning permission and use permits to build this, they were required by the city, the only way they're allowed to build it is to give it a public easement to the city for this road. So the city then paves the road. They pay, well, sometimes they do the road too. But they maintain the road, and then there is a public easement, so anybody who wants to can drive up and down that street, that public street there. So you still own the land underneath it, you still own it there, but you basically have no use of it whatsoever because you dedicated a public easement. If the city ever vacates the land, like if you want to build a gate to your community and make a private road, you can go to the city, and if you get everyone to agree to that, the city will vacate the land and give those easements back. And then the public can't drive on it. But there are public easements. Does that make sense? Okay. Got 4 minutes. See if I can do this. Adverse possession. This is a way to steal land from someone. It's a legal way to steal land. Adverse possession works like this. Back when they settled the West here, when our country started off, we had the 13 colonies, and pretty much all the land had been stolen from the indigenous, and everyone came in. Then we started, moving out and getting new territories and new states. We stole the land from the indigenous again there, but we couldn't always find people to move into it, because if you had to move out to Oklahoma or something, we actually stole that land twice from the indigenous. But anyway, if you had to move to Oklahoma, who wanted to move to Oklahoma? No one, right? So they didn't want to move out there. So to induce people to move out there, what they said is, hey, if you'll come out here and farm this land and use it, make useful use of it, we will give you 640 acres for free. You can have a giant plot of land. They give these land giveaways. And sometimes they do it in smaller ones, but Texas has done it too. This was to induce people. So a bunch of people will come out there, these Sooners, the Oklahoma Sooners, these people who who came out and claimed land that was being given away. That's what that means. So they claimed this land, and then they had to use it, and most importantly, they had to pay property tax. Well, that would work for a little while, but some people would die, and no one knew what happened to them, because there wasn't a lot of communication with everyone. Some people would go on a trip and go back east and then decide to stay there. Or a few of the people just disappeared, and no one knew what happened to the land. But to transfer the land, you have to have the grantor now sign a deed. And if you can't find them because they're dead or they left and never came back, it's impossible to transfer the land. And then no one pays the property taxes, and the land's not being used and not generating income and helping the economy. And this became a problem out here, especially in the Great Plains, like in the area we live in too. And so they came up with this doctrine of adverse possession. So adverse possession is if you go onto to someone else's property and you take it over and you claim it, so it's open, it's notorious, and you treat it as yours, you tell everyone it's yours, and you use it, and you use it exclusively. No one else can use it, you keep everyone else off, and it's adverse to the owner. If you do it for whatever the amount of time is, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, then you can go to court, file an adverse possession lawsuit once you've been to like the 15 years or something, and they will then title the property in your name. We did that so we didn't have land just sitting there with nothing going on. Yes?
Does it create a problem with squatting?
Certainly it does. So squatters are people who trespass and come on your property, and if they can stay there long enough, they can adversely possess your property. But it has to, most states, like in Nevada where I practice law, it was 5 years if they paid the property tax, which most squatters did. It was 15 years if they didn't pay the property taxes. But so what they do is, I think in Texas it's 10 or 15 years or something like that. It doesn't matter about property taxes. And so everyone who owns property, you need to check on it at least every 10 years to make sure someone has to come in and is adversely possessing your squatting. And people hear about squatters' rights. Texas doesn't have a lot of squatters. Squatter rights is just that someone's trespassing on your property, won't leave. How quickly can you throw them out? Just what's the eviction rules? That's what it is. So I got 20 seconds left. So adverse possession is a way of learning. You can adversely possess an easement. If you let somebody go out and stole a house with someone behind them, and they didn't have a way of getting the road, then there would be a prescriptive easement. Automatically,